Thank you. I'm not sure if it's worse to come after such a great panel or the cute puppy video, so I'm working on that. But it really is great to be here in New York. I'm always so happy to be out of D.C. because, of course, Congress is now back in D.C. and everyone there is very, very scared of vaginas. And so, and really everything connected to vaginas. So it's good to be with the lesbians who tack. And, you know, it's been, I assume, laughs aside, for me, and I know for almost everybody in this audience, a really, really painful 8 months. I'm going to go ahead and say everyone in this audience, a very painful 8 months with everybody and everything we care about being attacked and everybody trying to fight back. The good news is we have actually won a few things, and we want to celebrate those things so we can keep winning them. Not healthcare bill, let's call it, that was defeated, that really would have devastated millions of people's lives. And I'm happy to say that Planned Parenthood, which the queer inclusive badass disappeared. I was going to say the very queer, totally inclusive, and awfully badass Planned Parenthood, sexual and reproductive health provider to millions in this country, is still standing after all of those attacks. So, thank you. I will accept your claps on behalf of the organization. Really Planned Parenthood, in fact, has been standing up to the powers that be really for the past 100 years, and all because we have this crazy idea, which is that your body and your pleasure should be your own, right? That your body and your pleasure should be your own. And what technology is doing for us, and why we're at a tech conference, is it's really allowing us to improve and scale our work in service of that big idea. So imagine that you are a person who lives in a remote village in Alaska. Take yourself there. 500 miles from the closest health center. Imagine you can pick up your phone, go to your Planned Parenthood healthcare app, visit with a clinician from our team in Seattle, and a few days later, your birth control gets dropped off by float plane. It's cool because it just recently happened. Seriously, it just recently happened. Now, unfortunately, for Planned Parenthood, technology, we aren't into it because it's cool, although it's cool to come talk to you all. We're into it because it lets us be where our patients need us to be, whether that's online or way off in the woods somewhere. And so we're really excited about that. One thing that I'm sure about is we cannot wait for the hand-me-down technology that usually comes to nonprofits. We have to invent it, iterate it, innovate it ourselves, and with the help of people like you. So at Planned Parenthood, we use technology in three main ways. The first way, of course, is to bust down the barriers to care and information in this country and around the globe. The second is to make sure that we can bring people into the fight to protect access to that care and information. And the third is to really tackle the problem of stigma around sex, sexuality, and abortion. So last year, 68 million people visited PlannedParenthood.org, mostly on their mobile phones, and they went there for no BS, gender inclusive, sexual and reproductive health information that they could get 24/7, fully in English and Spanish, and we're working on expanding that to be able to reach other communities fully online. So that's really exciting. In addition to that app that I just mentioned that gets you online health services that we've begun to roll out, we also built and launched a new birth control and period tracking app called Spot On. Pretty good, right? Called Spot On. In its first year, it was downloaded more than 1 million times, and a very important technology forward magazine is about to name it as one of 2017's best apps. And what's super exciting about that is, right, a 100-year-old organization is building the best apps in the world. So think about that when you're thinking again about where you want to go to work. We're also partnering with technology companies. We try to get our content onto their platforms, Tumblr, Snapchat, Reddit, Vice, to name just a few, where we have partnerships so that we can be where young people are already searching for information. Now, technology also lets us get more people into the fight, as I mentioned, and boy, do we need them, right? So what I think back 10 years ago, we had maybe, I know it'll sound like a lot, but a couple of million people that we could kind of maybe talk to somehow, but we weren't sure and all of that. Today, we have 10 million people on our list who we know have taken an action. And we can, within minutes and sometimes seconds of, say, Congress launching a bill or the president tweeting something stupid, when would that ever happen? Get people mobilized. We use a lot of new technology platforms like Hustle, and we hack together stuff all the time, like we use Google Hangouts and hacked them together in a way that we could have 600 people on a pop-up phone bank recently. And sometimes, of course, we use all of those technologies to get 60,000 or 600,000 people out into the streets and out protesting some of the bad policies. Finally, I want to talk about an area we don't talk a lot about, which is the cutting-edge work that we're trying to do to tackle this question of stigma around sexual and reproductive health. We collaborated with some really amazingly brilliant people in the VR world to create a VR experience called Across the Line. And what Across the Line does is it documents what happens when too many people in this country try to get health care and what they get are protesters. Now, how many of you have seen either pictures of or in person those protesters who hang outside of health centers in this country and hurl abuse and hang up those gruesome posters to shame women and men and all people in this country when they seek the care that they need and deserve? A lot of hands went up in this room. And so we find it infuriating, disgusting, and we said, but maybe there's some hearts and mind changing that we can use this to do. So in our design process, we said, how could we bring the experience, the real experience? I always say, it's not nuns praying. It's like there's this image that it might be nuns sitting there quietly praying. That is not what they're doing, I promise you. So we said, how could we recreate this experience for people who would never experience it? And what would we expect to do as a result of that? So in the first scene of Across the Line, you're in a car with a woman as she is coming up to a health center, a real health center. And we used the audio and video from real protests, real protesters, the real posters, to kind of set the stage. But what's really cool is when the door opens in the car and someone steps out, that someone is you. You're the person walking up to the health center. You're that woman, and you are taking the incoming from those protesters. And we've taken that experience now all over the country, college campuses, state capitals, law enforcement leaders, to try to teach them what they need to understand about what the impact is on patients. And across the board, what we are finding is that the results of the early research are very, very promising. That people who have seen the film, what they do is they say, I strongly oppose this kind of harassment of women and other patients who are coming up to these health centers. I would like to see more protections for folks who are coming to health centers. And in a kind of twist we didn't expect, they are also saying that they're more supportive of a woman's or person's decision to have an abortion, even if they personally disagree with that. So it really is building empathy in unique and different ways than we've ever had the chance to do before. Now, one of the most standout things for me has been the reaction of men to this film. Yes. It gets really intense inside that headset, I can tell you. And I hope, by the way, anyone can see the film on Google Cardboard or Gear VRS, and also it is here at the summit. So I hope you'll try and make your way, and somebody can tell you where it's located. I'm not sure yet, but we'd love to get your opinion and get your feedback on it. But so one of the interesting things for men is that, you know, nobody ever gets in their space that way. Like, every one of the guys, women come out of this thing for the most part, and other people who have been taken abuse throughout their life and go, yeah, that's what I expected, or they're deeply, deeply moved. A lot of guys come out and they want to punch somebody. They just have never had anybody get up in their space that way. They've never had anybody yell at them that way. And so this is often what's happening is as we're watching them watch the film or be in the film, they're doing all these movements. It's like, what's going on in there? But I did want to tell you about one of our clinic escorts in St. Paul, Minnesota. This guy is a, you know, big, strong guy who almost every Saturday comes down and helps escort patients through the protesters into the health center to get care in St. Paul, Minnesota. I've met him a couple times. I thought, if anybody is going to be like unmoved by this, it's going to be him. But he wanted to see it. But that wasn't true. When he took off the headset, he was in tears. He was in tears. He said, I had become so numb to the protesters that I forgot that the patients can't tune out this abuse. You know, by moving 2 feet, by shifting from being in the shoes of the escort to the shoes of the patient, it was a revelation for him. Even though he had been standing right there beside them, that yelling had never been at him until that moment. So kind of my feeling is if 5 or 7 minutes in virtual reality can move people those 2 feet, if it can change their view that this is real people versus politics, then we can use this to change the world. And this is just the beginning, because I'm obsessed, and not in a weird way, with how we can improve teaching sex ed in this country. And I said, well, what if instead of Coach Carr, I know this dates me, but sorry, my children are like, what? Coach Carr, we could be teaching sex ed in VR, right? That would be remarkable. What if young people could use virtual reality to actually engage, for example, in practicing giving or not giving consent, right? What if a young person could experience what it's like to live in another gender identity or no gender at all, right? What if we could start to flip the script and put them in places and scenarios where they have to do good decision making before they're drunk and in that situation and making bad decisions, right? There's so many good things and interesting things that we could do. This new technology makes it all possible, and you, lesbians who tech, could make it all possible. So we are in an all-out battle, for the future of the country, but certainly for Planned Parenthood and sexual and reproductive health in this country, and really around the world. And I just believe we have got to stop playing politics with people's health and start actually making games that they can play to improve them, right? That would be a really good benefit. So I just wanted to come here today to say, if you want to build tech that will change the world, you don't have to go to the Silicon Valley, you don't have to go to the Silicon Alley, and I'm sure there's a name for it here in New York and a name for it in Austin, but you could come to a place like Planned Parenthood and help us to build the tools that people are going to use to improve their lives, to improve their health, and to really deliver on their dreams and the world that we all want. And so I just want to invite you to check out Planned Parenthood, to come bring your talents there, to come talk to us. We act like a startup. We try and change and improve every day, and we love what you're doing, and we love Lesbians Who Tech, and thank you for having me.